to digital currency. And so I want to get your view on digital currency, if you think that's, and to be specific, a government-backed digital currency, if you think that's the direction that we're going. If you do think that's the direction you're going, do you think that they'd do that to implement negative interest rates, or they would do that
that's what
to
they're
have?
talking about.
Oh, great. Let me get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love the IMF is one of my favorite websites because I get reports from all the time. And they've already, in 2015, they laid out how they could take us cashless, get us to volunteer to go cashless within weeks, their words, not mine, of the next financial crisis, because they could do it at the central bank window. And what they would do is they would, when you would go to, they want the retail public to distribute that to the general public because they want distance between their policy choices and how you see it, so you don't equate the two. But what they talked about is if you go in to buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks, if you use your debit card or credit card or your phone, it'll be $5. If you use cash, it'll be $6. What are you likely to do? You're going to use this. You're not going to want to pay this. If you go to withdraw money from your account, there'll be a fee attached to it. It'll cost you $20 to take out 100 or whatever. If you go to deposit it, there's going to be a fee attached, right? So they're going to make you volunteer the cash. And because it is you perceive that it's your choice, you do not blame them. But they need to go negative. They need to go negative. So let me just stay on cash for a minute.
Sure.
A more current piece on taking us cashless was on how to take us into deeply negative rates, not little teeny negative rates, but deeply negative rates. And that was regarding cash. They would put a chip in the cash so that rather than charging you that overtly, when it would track whatever their negative rate was, and whenever you went to use it or deposit it, it would reflect that negative rate. So for those viewers that are thinking, because for me, I think cash is the first line of defense because that's what people are used to. Yes, it loses all value, but that's still what people are used to. So they call the current cash that's out there now cash in the wild. And it would carry a premium because it doesn't have the chip yet. So for those, really, I created a strategy for myself based upon the normal life cycle of a currency and how that works. And so everybody here, all of our precious metals consultants have been trained in that strategy. And so there's a certain level of cash, there's a certain level of barterability, there's a certain level of growth, depends on what you're doing and all of that. But cash is certainly part of it. So if anybody is considering that, they probably want to get their cash out of the system sooner than later while it's still cash in the wild, which,
right.
Okay. But going back to, it would be a government, you want to call it backed, or I would say mandated currency in digital form. And the IMF is actually talking about having a retail SDR and as well as which would be for you and me, versus a wholesale SDR, which would be for the banks. And I do think that's the direction we're going in. Not a Bitcoin or any of those, but it will be government mandated. Watch China. We're kind of waiting for them to come out with the first government digital currency. But yeah, because if they want you to spend money, and all of a sudden you look at your bank account today and you got $1,000 in it. Okay. Tomorrow you got 900. The day after you got 800. Well, what are you likely to do? You're likely to go put it into anything that you think can hold its value.
Right.
better than the currency, and that's hyperinflation. Whether it's hyperdeflation or hyperinflation, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
That's a great point. I never thought about that with them putting the chip in the actual piece of paper. So if you used it, you wouldn't get the value that was on, you wouldn't get the nominal value. So if you go
Correct.
to Starbucks and your coffee is $1, let's say, if you used a piece of paper, it would only give you a credit for 95 cents or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you got to give credit. I mean, it's evil genius.
Yeah, right.
But look,
right.
These guys have had hundreds of years, well, at least 100 and some years, to know how to do this. And when you read their documents, they refer back to 1913. And the way that they do it then, that's the way they did it then, the way they did it in the 70s, is they keep things looking as normal as possible. So I can tell you, in July of 1971, I had a $20 bill in my pocket. In September of 1971, I got another $20 bill in my pocket. When you look at both those bills, even if it's an old one versus a brand new one, then they look almost identical. Not quite. There's a little tweak in there. But unless you were really examining that, you wouldn't notice it. Just like the gold certificate in 1912 and the Federal Reserve note in 1914, they look very, very similar. Yeah. So you just, and they keep the name.
Right.
You know, and my bet will be that we're going to end up with two, a local one. So maybe the Fed coin or the US dollar coin or something like that, probably the dollar coin, because that's what people are used to, as well as the SDRs, which is where they really want to hold your title to all of your wealth.